George Dunlap. The only thing I actually would ever ask of any of my family members is, are you related? Hey, Len, are you related? Well, when I went over and got George's, they gave me a box of his stuff. There were all these Christmas cards, and I came back and I felt like the biggest loser. I was like, I am so inappropriate. Just tearing these Christmas cards. I was reading them as if they were like written to me. I don't know. Sad person, right after Dad died. But then I decided to just take a bunch of the Christmas cards and have them tested. George is my second cousin, it says. Legally, he's my third cousin. He's my grandma's first cousin. My grandmother said he was like her brother. They grew up on adjacent farms. They're only so many years apart. They did not have siblings. I was like, Mom, there's no Ella. Whatever. Maybe there was an Ella. It wasn't Ella Hughes, okay? George's did not have a sister that married Paul Hughes from Pennsylvania. Anyways, George, not trying to, just hang my coattails on his estate, because I don't want one penny of what George earned. But I don't want one penny of what George earned not going to the foundations, the farmers, and the endowments. He had a very specific group of people that he wanted what he was leaving to go to. And those are not the individuals and the foundations and the groups that are benefiting one bit from George's estate. It was hijacked and liquidated. So just so the world knows, this guy is my cousin. And he wants me to stand up when I get a hold of his will, and his will has been revised to encourage hazardous waste dumping. And it's disgusting. He's encouraging global warfare by poisoning Americans through agriculture, and totally signs out of what is called this farm out agreement during my mom and my aunt's court case. So regardless of what Nate or Lenny or even Peg or even my sister think, I have gotten to know George very, very, very well. And when I went downtown and had the Franklin County probate, like, women tell me, Miss, was this man important? Because his estate, there's something going on. Like, his estate, is this his real estate? And I said, no, it's not. But they said, was he important? Slightly. Just slightly. Slightly important. Slightly. George H. Dunlap took over the Ohio Farm Bureau. Mr. Slaughter explains to me that AC gave George all the credit. And I was like, why wouldn't he? It's his nephew, and his daughter wanted nothing to do with the family business, or they wanted nothing to do with Sarah having anything to do with the family business. But Mr. Slaughter was like, why are you giving George so much credit? He walked into this, like as if George did nothing. Oh my God, George did everything. Honestly, he's my hero. More so, this whole thing and getting to know who my family truly is, like from the ground up, has been the greatest gift of all time. But for anyone to call me mentally ill for speaking up about a level of fraud that has gone back centuries. It goes all the way back to 1832, same year as the Skull and Crossbones is, founded. Jeffco, it's from the 60s. Sam Dunlap, Sam Roche, that's from the 20s. It's brought back in the 80s. When big data networked this whole thing together, that's when I was like, my brain is not crazy. But when it networked it together, literally, I was blown away. I had no idea who this man was. I personally knew nothing about Helen and Harry. Nothing. I really knew nothing about their lives. I knew nothing about Helen and Harry. Nancy, I knew she worked at IBM. This guy This guy. He changed. This guy winning his patents in 1916 is what saved the United States. And the Farm Bureau getting the notion from him to separate the mineral rights from the churches and from the banks in the 1920s is what saved our country. The Great Depression would have been the end of America had it not been for this guy. His name is Harry Wilton. He won his patents from Standard Oil in 1916. He went on to redevelop his patents. These are not his patents. These were Texas Oil patents. They were the Texas Company patents. But you'll see they're picked up by Howard Hughes. Okay. As of 1917, same year. I mean, when you gotta go back, you gotta go back, remember? As if Howard Hughes actually developed them. It's a joke. But the fact is, when Mr. Slatter realized, by the way, he told me Helen went by Nellie. Oh my God, when I saw Nellie. He told me that and I said, Nellie? Nellie is the main person in this. She is who they liquidate all of this stuff through the end. And that's what Grandpa told me was the case in the 60s. He said he lost his sister and his mom the same month, and he's not lying, But he told me that when I was 3.5, or almost 4. I guess I turned 4. I turned 4 right before he died. But yeah, Texaco was part of a cartel. Yeah, they denied it, and they were denying wrong. They were absolutely part of a cartel in the 20s, and then it comes back in the late 40s. It's shut down in the 40s, thanks to World War II, thanks to a few brave men in World War II, but then it comes back in the 60s, and then it comes back in 81. All you have to do is put in the same entities, because they bring them back to life. And, this is a great example of what you can expect with the Rockefeller Trust method. This is a power of attorney document recorded on July 29th of 1999 at 3:09 p.m. in real time. It is backdated to July 30th of 1991. The notary expiration is 1992. And the ORC, which is Ohio Revised Code, if you live here, you gotta learn it, is 1986. The big question is that, and by the way, this is the Jeffrey Epstein, Les Wexner power of attorney document. The big question is, from a legal perspective, when would this document be active as of? When would Jeffrey Epstein have become the power of attorney over Les Wexner? And the answer is never, because this is all bullshit. The fact is, you can maybe go back if the notary expiration date had been active or, in line with the recording date. But yeah, it's not legally binding. Nope. And either is this. These re-recorded to correct the notary dates. Anyways, this is 8 pages of mineral rights that the New Albany Company and the New Albany Company LLC are transferring to BP Products North America. And this is in addition to 32 pages, which it transferred in 2001, ahead of 9/11. What this is doing is it's actually transferring the mineral rights separate from Farm Bureau deeds. It's separating, they used to call it the mills and the wells, the mills partition company. It was like a mills partition. They would take the mills and partition the well, the minerals. Anyways, 23 pages spitting over to Les Wexner. Never in a million years would anyone have connected the Texas company with the Ohio Farm Bureau, but a detective here in Ohio did. He just couldn't figure it out, and there's no chance in hell he would have in the 90s. No chance. No chance. But he caught that the farm conspiracy from the 1960s that led to nothing but death and destruction. And then he connects it to the 1920s, but he knows it's back. As of 1998, he becomes obsessed. Obsessed. He knows there's going to be an attack on U.S. soil, and he became obsessed. He couldn't figure out what connects Texas oil to the Ohio Farm Bureau or U.S. Ag. And it's the Elms. The Elms Acres. Yep. Walker and Dunlop multifamily is this multifamily open-ended loan where all of the mineral rights titled to any of the historical estates and trusts of anyone buried at the Elms. You should go out there. McKinley's family's buried there. But anyways, they separate them. Black Sheep Farms. Sounds like Epstein to me. Sounds like farming. But they literally create... It's disgusting. But Black Sheep Farms is a fake entity that is created by Voorhees, Slater, Seymour, and Peace. Seymour and Peace. Gross. Landmark. As of the 1960s, they created the Landmark Hotel and Casino, which folded in the New Frontier Hotel and Casino. What better way to launder mineral rights and royalties offshore than through a freaking casino? Summa Healthcare rolling up into a fake American Farm Bureau. The American Farm Bureau and the American Petroleum Institute are fake entities that have come back to life numerous times as part of a bundle, all affiliated with Standard Oil Trust. The Standard Oil Trust are always managed offshore at a United States kind of like, so it's going to be Puerto Rico. It's going to be the Bahamas. It's going to be the United States Virgin Islands. And we had Edward in the 20s. We had Cuba in the 60s. Yeah, Fidel Castro. He actually dies on the birthday of JFK Jr. So August 28th of 1996, y'all, if we dump millions, and we're talking, the nice thing about Ohio and this plot, especially the way Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Gates brought it back, it is truly AI enabled. And it does pick up. It's 2014 that China actually comes in, because you can tell. I mean, like this, back in the day, AI was nothing more than changing documents ahead of time based on dates, timestamps. So you would basically like predicate a document to, or an entity to expire. That was what AI was. They called it EI. E-I-E-I-O. Old MacDonald had a farm. E-I-E-I-O. They called it EI back then. EI. Now it's AI. But they did call it EI back in the 60s. And it goes into like the 80s. Yeah. McAfee. That guy involved. Okay. August 28th of 1996 is the very first date that all Epstein stuff has a timestamp. And we did our due diligence. So this is when it's real time. So if you're thinking about like Back to the Future, like when he's there and when it's real time, this date. You click on that date, it's the same date that Prince Charles and Diana divorced. And that's important because the poor Spencer, she was a distant cousin of the founders of the Ohio Farm Bureau. They all signed quitclaims, in the 60s, I think it was 69 to be exact. And all those documents were held at Cantor Fitzgerald, I guess, in the World Trade Center. But let's go back to what happens 1 year later. This is all set up to reinstate all of these historic entities, one of them being the Farmers Commission Company, U.S. Commission Company, ADA. Yeah, they're set up to all expire and fold, cascade assets 365 days later. Google it. It's the day Princess Diana dies. The exact day that they were reinstated, they all, as independent entities, separate from the parent. Parent-child relationship. You should learn it. Separate from the parent, but these are all set to expire in 5 years. From a title perspective, that'd be 9/11. So poor Princess Diana. Yeah, August 29th is significant in pop culture, and that's August 29th, like US. She would have been dying UK. Got it? It would have been that evening. So she actually dies on August 30th. Weird, right? There's all kinds of stuff that pops up like that. Because the royals are kind of buttoned up when they have their shit laid out from a timing perspective. Well, so am I when I have my stuff requiring to go to global court, which I'm going to do eventually in my lifetime. And one of the men who is going to be sitting on the other side of the table is going to be George W. Bush. If he's still alive. If it won't be him, it'll be all of his heirs. Because the way the Rockefeller plot works is, it's kind of a lifer type thing. It's, you pass the baton down or the baton passes to somebody else. So even if George W. Bush is dead, or let's say Epstein is dead, it doesn't mean that their ability to control, like their interest, their beneficial interest, it just passed on to someone else. We need to figure out who they are. We need to basically, we'll get there. But first things first, back-end integrations are no good for no one. I mean, anybody. Not when the back-end integrations are like EDS and CCH. CCH is like Commerce Clearinghouse. These are really sinister type entities. We want to eradicate them all. And make sure that they can't re-record historical documents in the state of Ohio and Texas. They're pretty important states. Yeah. Swartz, Kelm, Warren, Rubenstein. Warren Commission. Rubenstein, Ruby. Jack, Ruby. Swartz. If you go back to the 60s, there was a Swartz and an Epstein in conjunction with one another being investigated, and they're kind of like pawned off as Israeli diplomats, like they were real. No, they weren't. They're double agents that are working for Israel and competing against the Kennedys. So the Bushes kind of aligned themselves with Israel and Iran and Iraq. They did. Whereas Joe Kennedy, back in the day, and they kind of like competed against each other, even though they were all on the same team, kind of working for the king. They were all trying to be the next American prime minister. Like they would be the president of America, the king of America, the new king. But anyways, Kennedy, Italians, the mob, Bushes, Walkers, Israelis. Got it? There's definitely a clear delineation. It's true. It's 100% true. And why they have to go back to 99? Why do they have to go back to, from 99 back to 91? Well, they kind of kicked it off with John F. Kennedy Jr. dying. I'm not sure if you look at the date, but we forgot to mention that. You click on that week, he dies. And his wife and sister. And they're not allowed to be buried in Arlington. Weird. So they get buried at sea. No different than Robert Maxwell. Oh, speaking of Robert Maxwell, he died in 91. Yep, November 6th or 5th or 4th. I get him and Bella Wexner confused because they died 20 years to the day. November 4th, 1991, and then it becomes November 4th or 5th, 2001. 20 years. Boom. And then there's George Seymour. So Seymour George Epstein, he dies 91. Got it? Backdated. Literally pretending like the Texas Oil Company had just thrown away all their patents. See, they were granted out of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania because that's where the Steiners granted the permits for Harry Wilton and the Texas Oil Company to begin safely exploring oil and gas exploration in the Gulf for the United States of America. Do you understand this? For the United States of America. So when you take this stuff over, backdated to 75, and you do so in like 2008, and the very first project that you coordinate is called the Deepwater Horizon, and then you make fools of yourselves. Like, absolute fools of your... It's not even... This isn't about fools. This is about why the world... Like, who did not shut that down? And I guess maybe you did, but by the way, I've gone through every one of British Petroleum and all of the fake fucking entities that they use in the Gulf, and they push it. They push it quite a bit. Yeah, they just had a huge pipeline explosion where they put out a fire in the Gulf. So if you think, 45 days of oil seeping out of the core of our, like, what the F are we doing? Okay? So anyways, Gulf Oil and Ohio State, they all go hand in hand because this stuff has been liquidated to overseas adversaries, without a question. LTV. When I saw that Republic Steel came back to life as all these fake freaking entities, 8.9 billion in this fake New Jersey-based Cleveland. 9 billion in Texas company securities. So, Jerry Kasich. Jerry Kasich works at Landmark Equipment. Ever hear of him? Jerry Kasich? Kasich is the governor. And then there's a guy named William W. Vaughn, WWV3. If you look him up, he is the president of Landmark Land Company. He's on Epstein's stuff. Like, he's Epstein's alias. WWV3. Well, WWV, everybody, is low frequency, and 3 is like low frequency World War III. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. Like, kind of like, hey, we're just doing it on the DL in case nobody notices. But yeah, that's what's been happening. Yeah. And the biggest, like I said, issue I have with any of it is, well, not just that we've had presidents who accepted bribes both before and after 9/11. Like, let's just pretend like George Bush didn't know what his grandpappy and his grandpappy and grandpappy. Let's just say he didn't know how they made their money and that he was holding on all this stuff and that's the only way he got into office. Let's just pretend, right? That George Bush was just George W., little George. That he was just oblivious. Maybe they didn't fill him in on how he became president, or how he became governor. Let's just pretend. Let's say 9/11 happens, and then as president, that you've been set up with like hundreds of millions of dollars. And you kind of know, right? You kind of know that this is you profiting off the demise of the United States, like the death and demise of innocent people. What do you do at that point? Let's just pretend like he wasn't in on it. Okay? What do you do? As a good person, you come forward. You deny liquidating United States securities and 42% of the United States economy from there. You kind of you back out of it if you are truly an American who's not a traitor, right? There's a big difference. 1992, George Bush pardons all principal. These guys, when I saw the names, I was like, wait a minute. Does that mean they're just free to go? Despite all the shit they did leading up to this? They set the stage. Big Papi. I bet he just is I'm sorry, Grandpa, I failed. He was so dedicated, I can't believe that I couldn't do it. But my son will not let us down. Okay. Ohio seals and destroys all historical Shapiro files. Epstein is retained by the Rockefeller University, and it is August of 1996, the exact date that Princess Diana and Prince Charles are divorced legally, that the plot is in motion, and this guy He has contracts in place. He just gets to keep a percentage. He came to Ohio and said he was the bounty hunter in the insurance industry. Hello, everybody, insurance industry. What's the biggest insurance company in the state of Ohio? What's the biggest insurance company in Columbus? How did Les Wexner get all the land out in New Albany? From Landmark Inc., he forwarded all the freaking farm titles to Les. That's exactly what happened, and it's black sheep farms. We saw it. Anyways, so George W. Bush and Richard Cheney, they don't submit their disclosure as to, like, what they're doing behind the scenes, like, who they are, until after they're elected. And remember, we didn't even put them in office. But it is all of these entities that they authorize Epstein bringing back that come back with subscription banks. And therein lies, one of them being Countrywide, another being Enron. We have Lehman Brothers. We have First Energy. We have a plethora. All of these have banks behind them. Fake banks. Set up to do one thing and one thing only. Liquidate the St. George Trust. That'd be George Washington, y'all. That'd be George Washington. This whole plot, back to the 20s, had one goal and one goal only. To take over the United States from within. Win from within. And let me tell you, according to history, since 1999, we have not been in control of our own destiny. That's what this detective wrote. And I'm looking into it. I'm like, he's freaking right. Matrix said the same thing. But this detective, he predicted 9/11. He thought it was going to be in Ohio. But what would you do? What would you do